Let's go with that. Quit to DOS. Thanks for sticking around. I'm obviously out of sorts. Like, I can tell that I am expressing frustration, and that you guys, it's obvious. I think it's I think it boils down to this is a game that I have derived so much value from. It's hard to reconcile that with the idea that there's not anything really super unique about it. And I think the closest thing that there is that it's so tightly integrated into a larger fantasy world. But I mean, that's goofy. We've got that all over the place now. I mean, Telltale licenses games like crazy. There's a Game of Thrones game. There's also a Lord of the Rings game. Shadows over Mordor is fantastic, and does not all, but a lot of the things that Betrayal at Krondor does better. And a lot more. We've advanced the state of the art. I mean, two things. One is we're continually advancing the state of the art. And the other is this is a game that existed at a time when the art was severely constrained. And I think that we're moving out of that. So yes, the games that are produced today, they still test the limits of the technology that we run them on. They always will. They always will. But there's a difference. I think that more and more they're testing the limits of technology with flourishes. Rather than with the core of their being. And this is a game that very obviously pushed up against what was technically possible with everything that it wanted to be. And it found ways to approximate a first-person camera when a first-person camera was not feasible. And that's fucking cool. I mean, that is neat. So as an antiquity, I think that this game is still super cool. It's super great. It's just not what it was 20 years ago. It's a different time. All right. Q&A. I'd love to hear stuff about GDC. Although, frankly, I don't know how much I have to say that's that interesting at this point. But if you have questions about GDC, then throw them at me. And anything that you guys want to know about this game, I would love to talk about. I mean, obviously, I love to talk about it. But if there's anything that was particularly interesting to you, or that you're curious about or have questions about, let me know. That'll help focus. All right, general question. Have I played Undertale yet? Because Cage Tiger saw the most interesting dissection of its morality system that made her think of me, and would love to talk to me about it. Don't want to spoil the game if you haven't played it. Guys, God, I can't. Can somebody explain Undertale to me? Here's the thing with Undertale. I've played like an hour of it. And it was super not fun. There was an interesting, so I played through the beginning part where you play as a human child who falls down a hole into the realm of monsters, and there are some hostile monsters that you encounter, but you quickly realize that monster is not a synonym for hostile, that there are actually plenty of oh god, civilized is a loaded term, but potentially friendly monsters who at least wish you no particular harm, and just kind of want to live their own lives, and you are adopted by one who is super nice, and just wants to protect you. And then there's this really, really interesting narrative tension, between this maternal figure wanting to protect you, and kind of suffocating you in that protection. You don't get to express yourself, you don't get to be who you want to be, you don't get to have the adventures that you would expect to have in a game like this, because this maternal figure doesn't want to put you in any danger. And so to sort of go off an adventure is feels kind of, I felt guilty about it, right? It feels like you're betraying someone who really cares about you, but is not necessarily who maybe wants the best for you, but is not the best thing for you. That was cool. That was a cool little story bit. It was better in a sort of a game than in a short story, because I felt like I wanted that freedom, and I had to make the choice of whether I was gonna, be who she wanted me to be or whatever. But then none of it was fun. And then I got to the end of that, and those characters were all gone, and now there's some skeletons that I just could not bring myself to care about even a little bit, and it seemed like the game was going to go on forever from there, and I didn't play any more than that. Does it change substantially? I don't know. I will also say that one of the things that I really want to do, I have all of these grand ambitions, especially coming off of GDC. I'm sure none of them will ever materialize, but one of them is I want to do more streaming with some of the other folks here at USC that I work with, and I would kind of love to do an Undertale stream with Jesse Vigil, who is of much the same mind about that game. Doesn't really understand the appeal or how excited people got about it. So that's something that may happen in the future. Look forward to that. Also, maybe watch a stream of it. That's not a bad idea, Cage Tiger. I might hit you up for that if Jesse and I don't play. So, bottom line, I played a little bit of Undertale. Not enough to really fundamentally understand the morality system, but enough to sort of see how it presents itself at first, at least. Okay, let's talk about morality systems, because I had a conversation about morality systems just this week that was really interesting, that kind of boiled down to, first of all, games tend to present morality systems like other social systems as transactional in nature. That it's a lot about what you give and what you get for what you give. I'm thinking this through a little bit more. I don't know that I totally disagree with that. Okay, so there was an article that was written earlier this week or last week sometime. I read it. I read some of it. I didn't read the whole thing because I was at work. But that was about how the problem with morality systems in games is there's too much math. And I think that there were two things that it was saying. First of all, that morality is presented as explicitly transactional, and that it is governed by a knowable system. That the system by which your morality is calculated can be easily understood, either through the game or through the larger social context in which the game exists, vis-a-vis the internet today. And I don't disagree with that entirely, but I think that it misses one of the most important issues. So to borrow a point that was made by the friend of mine who showed me the article, Dennis Ramirez, it's a little bit disingenuous to say that the math is what's wrong. That reducing morality to numbers is what games are is the sort of wrongness of the approach that games are taking, because that's how games approach everything. Every simulation of everything is math. When we're dealing with games, the simulation of a visual world is all math. The simulation of audio, of dialogue, of any kind of interaction is all math, right? Computer games are formalized systems precisely because they exist in a space, in a digital space where everything is made out of bits and frames, and they have to simulate things in those terms. So either morality is something that exists somehow apart from the world in such a way that it cannot be simulated, which just strikes me as ridiculous. Or our simulations of it just aren't good enough, in the same way that the visuals, the first person camera in Betrayal at Krondor is obviously a computer generated image. It is not possible to mistake that for the real world. However, a lot of the imagery that we produce in AAA games today, while I don't know you would necessarily mistake it for the real world, comes a lot closer. It simulates reality much better, even though it is still just math, right? It's not real. It's a extremely limited, constrained simulation based on pixels and clock cycles and frames. So, how do we simulate morality more effectively? And what is the experience of morality? Because as we sort of see with visual images and physics and all sorts of other systems that we simulate, it's actually less important that we simulate the reality faithfully, and more important, that we simulate the experience of the reality effectively or affectively, I guess, in a way that feels right to the player. So what is the experience of morality? And here's my take on it. Morality is about seeing systems at different scales. So when I do something that is not in my immediate self, that's not in my self-interest, right? If I make a choice that is the right choice, that is not in my own self-interest, that we would call that morality, right? That is a clear example of me making a choice because of its rightness, even though that choice puts me at a disadvantage. What's the experience of that, though? I mean, at some level, that sense of rightness, my decision to make that choice over a different choice, is because I am looking at the problem in a different frame. I'm not thinking about the problem in terms of what is the best for my short-term self-interest, or even necessarily my even my long-term self-interest. Yes. I'm thinking about it in a different frame, and that frame might be religious. I might be thinking about this choice as being the thing that benefits me, and religiously, this would usually be directly, in a larger system where I deny myself some immediate advantage, but I am rewarded in either karmically or in the afterlife, or in like closeness to God, or there is a reward in a larger system, and that's what I have my eye on. I'm willing to give up the sort of short-term or even long-term benefit to myself because of this sort of larger reward on a spiritual level. Okay, so that sounds like it's still self-interest. Fine. There is a religious morality where I might make the same kind of decision, where I am trading the short-term or long-term benefits to myself for a benefit to a society of which I am a part. So this would be sort of a eusocial morality, or for the benefit of an ideal or a banner in which I believe. So in these cases, this is not there's not a personal reward at any level, but there is at some level a system in which something that I am aligned with benefits from the choice that I make, right? So if I give up if I give money to someone so that they can eat, I am losing. That is not in my financial self-interest. It is not presumably an investment in future financial self-interest. I might do it because I think it gets me closer to heaven, or I might do it because I believe in an ideal of humanity, where the whole of humanity is more valuable than my individual part of it. And this is an action by which I can benefit that entirety, even though it hurts me individually. So it is it is still kind of transactional, right? The way that I am talking about and thinking about and experiencing morality is still kind of transactional. So maybe that's not the problem with it. The problem with it is that games have an extremely limited scope. Certainly tend to. And that scope is sort of definable, right? There's nothing outside of the game. The game is this sort of little closed system, and it is separate from everything else. It has defined boundaries. I'm essentially talking about the magic circle, right? The magic circle, the concept that when players play a game, they leave the real world and enter an imaginary space that is somehow separate from the real world, where their decisions are shielded from real world consequences. And the fact that in a game, my decisions are shielded from real world consequences means that the only levels at which I can imagine consequences for my actions are internal, are embedded in the game. And in general, that is, pretty straightforward. That is all explicitly programmed into the game's systems. It is knowable, and therefore doing a transactional analysis on it and saying, this action is going to benefit me in these ways, it's going to opposite of benefit, it's going to harm me in these other ways, let me just evaluate those two things against each other. Most games fail to create contextual systems at such different scales that interact around meaningful decisions, but not so much in other ways, that those morality decisions feel like morality decisions. And maybe most notably for me as a secular humanist, the world that my decisions affect is clearly bounded, and the people with whom I interact are clearly artificial, and so it is actually difficult for me to afford them the virtues, the benefits, I guess, of human beings, because they're so obviously fictional people living in a fictional world. They're so obviously unreal people living in an unreal world. And that's the basis of my morality, for the most part, is a belief in human dignity and individual humanity. It is possible for me to frame games in such a way that I imagine individual humanity for non-player characters, but that's a suspension of disbelief, right? That's I have to actively work against the game as a known enclosed system. I have to imagine that it is something other than it is in order to feel that my interactions with the non-player characters are meaningful beyond the scope of the game, right? Not that that's impossible to do, but it's difficult, and it's especially difficult for the game to make me do it, right? It's something that I have to bring to the table. Really well written characters, really well written situations, great voice acting, all of that can help me along. But at this stage, at the level of technology that we have, the way that we develop fiction, it is hard to fool me into even willingly believing that a video game character is more than a video game character. Obviously, this is not true in multiplayer games, but I would argue that morality absolutely exists in multiplayer games. So I think the problem with morality systems in games is that they are they're too knowable. They're too sort of easy to figure out what. No, I don't even know if that's what it is. Like, there is absolutely something about the closed circuit of a game that is fundamentally problematic to morality systems. There's something about the scale at which we think about consequences to actions that I think is severely limited in games and therefore problematic in simulating morality systems. Okay, so Undertale, I think a big part of Undertale's morality system is that it's not quantified. It is based on a fundamental assumption that the player has some suspension of disbelief about the game as a closed system. It is about... I don't know what it's about. I didn't play enough of it. Because it's either about buying into the game world and the characters in the game world and their granting them a level of humanity that allows you to make moral decisions about them, or it's about tapping into the player's own identity outside the context of the game, their belief system, their values about what actions are I guess like ultimately acceptable. I mean, I think it plays into a sense of, is it ever okay to kill somebody? And if I, as an individual, as a human being outside the context of the game, believe that it is not acceptable ever to kill somebody, then the game presents me with an opportunity to defend my identity position, which actually does tap into a moral framework that I have, because it taps into a moral framework that exists outside of the game. It taps into my own self-identity. But again, like, or it's doing both of those things, but both of those things require me as a player to buy into the idea that the game is a significant, real, legitimate challenge to the moral framework that I have that exists theoretically outside of the game. And, clearly it succeeded at that for some people. But I didn't care about it after an hour, and so I don't think it would have succeeded for me at any point. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I didn't get over a hump, and I would have gotten into it at some point. Maybe I am grossly misunderstanding or misstating the way that the morality system works. I would love to talk to you more about it, Cage Tiger, either after I play the game, watch somebody play the game, or stream it with Jesse, or do something along those lines. But I wanted to go off on a tangent about morality systems. Sorry. You guys have to listen to me when I do that, because what else are you going to do? Turn off your computer? I mean, yeah, I guess that's, yeah, but thanks. Thank you for not doing that. I appreciate it. Okay, Eve, who was in San Francisco and at GDC, and I got to see there, and it was wonderful. Asks me what my main takeaways from GDC were. So a lot of them were not generally relevant. I had a bunch of meetings with folks about like projects and USC and stuff like that. And I got a lot of really good insights that are related to, you know, the stuff that I'm working on here or hope to be working on, or that kind of thing. More generally interesting things, there are a couple of them. One is really difficult for me to articulate, though. I went to a series of talks. So I don't know that I've talked about this. One of the classes that I am teaching this semester is a finishing and polishing class. The point of the class is to take student projects that were completed in other classes. So the final projects generally from other courses that students worked really hard on and finished and turned in and got a grade for. And then spending a semester basically preparing them for a public launch, so that they don't just end up sitting in somebody's portfolio and never have a chance to be experienced by anybody else, which is sadly the fate of, you know, a lot of student games, and it's probably appropriate for a lot of student games, but you know, after spending several years here and seeing really talented students go through the program, and there's kind of a numbers game of eventually some really talented students get lucky and have a good idea and work hard to execute it, and get lucky and it works out. And it turns out really well, and I feel like those games really deserve to be seen, to get out there a little bit more. So we've got a bunch of games this semester that are all doing that. So the course is like partially a production course of you thought you finished your game, no, you haven't finished it yet, finish it. And it's partially a like marketing class. It's partially a class that's about the fundamental game designer skill of having empathy with somebody else. Thinking about the thing that you have made from the perspective of someone who has never seen it before. But specifically thinking about it from the perspective of someone who has never even heard of it before. How do you present your game? How do you describe it? What language do you use to talk about it? How do you... who is it that you're actually interested in talking to? Who's the audience for your game? Where can you find them? How can you catch their attention? What can you say to them that will make them understand why your game is worth playing? So there's a lot of that's in the class. went to a couple of talks at GDC that were about marketing and PR and that kind of thing, and kind of platforms associated with that, and generally for indies and games that don't really have much of a budget associated with their launch or release. How can you be effective? How can you be effective at that? I got some really, really good ideas and talking points that I brought back to class. Jesse is my co-teacher of this class, so we teach it together, and he also went to a bunch of these with me and actually synthesized them really well and gave a lecture this last week that incorporated a lot of that. A lot of it is just about attention and bringing the there's a really great Tinder metaphor of thinking about Tinder profiles and how they're constructed and how they work and what they're meant to do, and building a presence, essentially an advertisement for your game, based on those principles, based on the principles of you have 10 seconds at most for somebody to be intrigued enough by what you're saying to swipe right, and then you have a little bit more time, right? But there's an immediate snap decision of either this might be worth my time or this is definitely not worth my time, and that's your first hurdle. You got to get past that. So that was a really interesting way to sort of frame it and think about it, that I brought back to my students. Thought a lot about this stream and the streaming that I am doing, and how I want to continue doing that and push it forward, and along what lines I would like to push it forward, and what of that is really feasible. I am super interested in integrating what I am doing here more with the program at USC, but it's not 100% clear how to make that happen, or what it would look like. But that's something that I've been thinking a lot about. That's not really a takeaway. I guess the takeaway is that I'm interested in not just maintaining play-by-play as it is, but pushing it forward, and it's actually really difficult for me to figure out how to do that. Yeah, I guess those are my main takeaways from GDC. GDC is awesome. I love getting to see all of the people that I care about who I don't get to see often enough. And also, they all give each other diseases. That's also a good takeaway. Okay, so Hasselvista asks, is there some similarity between Betrayal at Krondor and the old Might and Magic series, which I really haven't played, and I certainly haven't played enough of to answer that question. You know what might redeem 2 weeks of streaming Betrayal at Krondor? Trying to play some old Might and Magic and seeing if there's any value in a comparative analysis of the two games. It could also be a disaster. I don't know. Okay, that's a possibility. Who knows what we're going to do next week? The world is exciting and uncertain. Can't answer that question. Sorry. Maybe I will in the future. It is an intriguing question. Might and Magic is an RTS, isn't it? That makes me super curious. Also, I hate RTSs, and I'm terrible at them. So that might be fun. Okay, here's the question that I never answered. Wait, is this the question? How comparable is the effort required for a game like this in Yeah. How comparable is the effort required for a game like this in comparison to modern games? Is it fair to say there are more or fewer limitations because technology has changed? I kind of talked about this, didn't I? Without like answering the question. I think that to summarize it, there are always limitations based on technology. We will always make games to fill the space that we have, and that is that's number of bits, and that is the sort of technological possibility space. It's all of it. So the faster the machines we have are, the more we will make them work. And there are a couple of reasons for that, but some of it is you can probably do the same thing less efficiently for less money. So we can make cheaper games that do the same thing but require better hardware to run. But we will there will always be a prestige associated with pushing the hardware and doing the most that the technology is capable of. I don't know that that's always universally, but in our lifetimes, that will always be the case. But I think there is a fundamental difference. I think that games in the early 1990s and certainly before that, the conceptual space in which we could think about games and the technology space, the comparison between the two of them, technology was severely limiting. And today, the technology is limiting, but other things are more limiting. Often it's the cost of production for things is very limiting. The production cost associated with people generating content is comparatively more expensive today than the constraints imposed by technical feasibility compared to earlier eras. So for Betrayal at Krondor, the expense associated, the constraints associated with the technology limited game design more than the size of the game, the content in the game. Today, the technology is much less of a factor at the same scope of content, right? So if we just wanted to recreate Betrayal at Krondor, the technology wouldn't be a problem whatsoever. We could also make Betrayal at Krondor and make it really pretty, and the technology still wouldn't be a problem. Technology isn't a problem compared to the amount of human effort that goes into actually creating all of that content. Different characters, different storylines, different types of interaction, all of that kind of thing. So I think there is a fundamental difference, and I think that technology is less limiting today. It's certainly less limiting on the design. It's less of a design constraint for games. There are still technical constraints. There's still, brilliant breakthroughs in optimization that need to happen. There are folks out there who will never stop trying to make those graphics better. God bless them. But from a design standpoint, designers are much less constrained in their basic design, in like, what do I want the game to be. They're less constrained by the technology than they used to be. Obviously, games today are more expensive to make than Betrayal at Krondor was. The effort that goes into them is greater. But I think that has a lot to do with the scope of the game increasing dramatically, rather than, even though technology is less of a burden, we've increased the scope of the game so much that we've increased the production cost dramatically as well. Thenarod says, as technology becomes less limiting, scope increases dramatically, maybe even exponentially, and cost becomes the new constraint. Exactly. Yes. Good job. You said that in like 15 words. Maybe you want to do a stream. Maybe you should do some more streams, Thano. Okay. One or two more. Vincere Starcraft, sorry, I have just not had time to play the game that you made. Destroy structures and send enemies flying with your powerful magic as you seek revenge via a randomized node-based world map. I think I'm going to have some more time in the next few weeks. Let's come back to this. I have also not played Darklands. Look at all of these DOS era games. So, I mean, this is also like fundamentally true of my childhood. I did not play a lot of games. I played a few games a lot. That is certainly true. I played Betrayal at Krondor. I played the entries in the Quest for Glory franchise. I played Civilization 2 a lot. I played certainly a decent amount of Mario 64 and Star Fox 64. Couple others. I played a little bit of some other games. I played a little bit of Silent Storm. I played a little bit of King's Quest and Space Quest. I played some of the. I played the NES and SNES era Zelda games, Super Mario Brothers 3, like some of that stuff. Never touched a Final Fantasy game until I was in college. Never touched a LucasArts game until I was in college. Never touched a Bethesda game until I was in college. Still haven't played a Pokemon game aside from Go. Never played Tomb Raider until... No, that's not true. I played some Tomb Raider maybe in grad school. Played... there's a lot of games that I didn't play. And all of the RTSs, still have never played multiplayer, whatever the fuck Sean plays. StarCraft. Still haven't played multiplayer StarCraft. Yeah, I don't claim to be like especially well versed, especially in the earlier era of games. Whatever depth of knowledge I have comes from intensive study of some few examples. And then a lot of it has been sort of picked up since. But there's still a lot of classic, very popular, very good games that I never played. Man, I don't know. StarCraft does not occupy a really like top level register in my brain. It takes me a minute to fish that out. Yes, right. Okay. How many conversations at GDC were about how great Jason is? Two? I think maybe two. I don't know, man. You're pretty great, but there was a lot going on at GDC. Like, it's tough to compete with that. Will your talk be available in the vault or somewhere else, generally accessible? It will at least 100% be available in the vault, I am pretty sure. 100% pretty sure. I have been told that it will be up in the next couple of weeks, maybe in the next week. I at least expect to hear more information in the next week or two. And I'll let you know what I hear when I hear it. I mean, that said, I have also heard that GDC has zero interest in notifying anybody about where their talks are when they get moved around. So I also have no idea how they make decisions. So it's possible that my talk will be available online, locked behind an extremely expensive paywall. It's possible that it will go straight up onto YouTube. It is certainly possible that it will be behind an extremely expensive paywall for like 2 years and then it'll go on YouTube. I just don't know. I'll let you guys know whatever I hear. And I'm basically waiting to hear what GDC does, at least at first, before I make any next moves on that. But we'll see. It will certainly be in the vault. If anybody has vault access and is interested in watching the talk, you will be able to do that before too long. Have you read any of the books Betrayal at Krondor is based on? No. Nope. Yeah, I don't think I read any of them. I certainly was not aware of them before this game. I became aware of that whole fantasy series through Betrayal at Krondor. And then I may have owned one or two of them because of the game. I mean, just because of the game. It's possible that I started reading them and lost interest. I mean, that is certainly not impossible. I read a lot of books and I read a lot of fantasy as a kid, so it would surprise me if I started reading those books. Either I just somehow never came across a Raymond D. Feist book. I don't believe that. I did, but it never made it to the top of my book pile, which is certainly possible, although kind of weird. Or they were really bad and I blocked them out of my mind, which maybe is true. I certainly don't. There's not a Midkimia legacy that persists to today, I don't think. So maybe they just weren't that good. I don't know. That's a good question. I had not read any of them before playing this game. I have not really read any of them ever, which is strange that I got so into this game, but I think it speaks to how good the quality of the writing is, irrespective of the larger world that it's a part of, and the design of the mechanics of the game are so compelling, or I found so compelling, certainly at the time, that I didn't need to care about the larger fictional context of the story. I could just dive right into Betrayal at Krondor. Have you played Night in the Woods? And if so, thoughts on it? Okay, so I've played probably less than an hour, maybe an hour of Night in the Woods. I'm not sure how long Night in the Woods is. I like it better than Undertale. But I am also not super compelled by it. I think the writing is exceptional. The writing is really, really, really good, and frankly, the only thing that is I fully intend. I've got it on my PlayStation. I fully intend to keep playing it. That's pretty much because the writing is so charming. The art is also really good. Thematically, I think it's interesting. Mechanically, there is super little there, although the little that is there is pretty good. I like the sort of like direct control of hand mini games that keep popping up, where I have to like pick things up or punch buttons by awkwardly controlling the hand of the character. But there's not a lot more to it than that. It is also implied that there is some time management stuff going on, which is a genre of system that I love. I'm super, super interested in. But my suspicion is that it's extremely light, that it doesn't have a lot of impact. Could be wrong about that. It hasn't sold me on how important my decisions are, and how much they're going to affect how grand the consequences of them are going to be. That doesn't seem to be what its bag is, which is fine. I'm just glad that the writing is really good, because otherwise I probably would lose interest really fast. I will report back. I'm sure that I will make progress in Night in the Woods at some point. Maybe not this week, but at some point. If the people that populate the game world are better representations, will that affect the way that we experience morality? Okay, two things. If the people who populate the game world are better representations of real people, then the barrier to suspension of disbelief is lower. So it's easier for me to treat them as though they are real people, even though they're not. That still requires active participation and probably effort on my part. If at any point I want to think of them as unhuman, unreal, non-player characters, it's trivial for me to do that. It doesn't really matter how good the representation is. If it is a game in the way that we understand games, if the system is even remotely knowable, if the scope of the game is even remotely understandable, if it is self-contained in the way that all of our games are currently, then I think there is never a point where it becomes work for me to entirely discount the humanity of one of the fictional characters. I think that's always trivially easy. I think that's always the default. I think if the characters are really, really well represented, then it becomes easier for me to do the opposite. But it's still, positive effort. which is, I mean, which isn't to say that that's not worth doing, or that couldn't create compelling moral experiences. But you are always relying on the player's active participation to create those experiences. And then I promised the second thing, right? I said there were two things. What's the second thing? Oh, I mean, I guess just like, maybe in the future we will understand games in a completely different way. We'll represent characters in a completely different way, so that there is true ambiguity about their reality, their dignity, their individual humanity, and then I think we will be faced by all kinds of moral choices. Cool. Okay, you guys are awesome. It's 10:30. I'm gonna wrap this up. Oh man, I have a good show and tell, but it's kind of an extended one. Let's save it for another time. Here's something that's just on my desk. This was a gift that I was given. Anyway, this is a gift that I was given. It is a large novelty-sized D20, where the number 20 side is actually a Magic 8 ball. So, oh, I shook it too much. I forgot that you're not supposed to shake Magic 8 balls. And now it's not gonna work. Good job. Oh, come on. No, I'm so close. I can almost read this. It says re-roll. Are you fucking kidding me? Really? So anyway, the point of it is it's a novelty. Like, it's not really. But the idea behind it is if you you roll a d20 and you get whatever number you would normally get, but if you get a 20, then it gives you some kind of instruction or sort of like extra thing. Come on, what is this? I rolled a 20, hypothetically, and am told... Oh, this is terrible. But this is also... I mean, so obviously I've never actually, like, used it in a tabletop role-playing situation. But presumably, if you were to do so, it would get like totally shaken up, and so what's happening is the shaking is causing all kinds of little bubbles to form that are rising to the top and obscuring the like D8, the floating D8 that's in here that has stuff written on each side. Okay, so that was kind of a whatever. Show that tell. This is better. This was created by and given to me by Eve when I saw her in San Francisco. This is an adorable little Shanbo, complete with traditional play-by-play red checkered red plaid, the red and black plaid shirt that I failed to wear today. And I also got this guy, who, if you do not recognize, is one of the characters from Beglitched. I almost said Glitch Witch. Beglitched, which I just I played Beglitched, like one time, I think, on this show, which was probably appropriate. Like it's a game that required a lot of attention from me most of the time, but god damn, that game is good. Like, if you're looking for a game to play that is, you just want to have the pants charmed off of you, that is a cute, funny, simple, but also kind of fiendishly clever, and occasionally diabolical puzzle game, logic game primarily, that has such a good narrative premise and just little dialogue interactions. It is so fucking good. It's so good. Anyway, I've played a bunch of it since the stream, and I know Eve is also a fan of it, and so she made me this little guy. I'll take pictures and post them to Twitter, but thank you, Eve. Thanks for reminding me to do that. Those are awesome presents. I love them, and I'm glad that I got to share them with all of you. Okay, there we go. That's it. I'm done. I'm gonna go home. I'm going on vacation this weekend. So I will not see you guys on Monday. I think that Sean and Bill are gonna do a show without me, which thank fucking God, because they're playing Return to Zork more. But I will be back on Thursday, and I'll do another play-by-play. Okay? You guys are awesome. Thank you for bearing with me. I know some of you really did not enjoy this game and knew it, and some of you were extremely indulgent about this game. It's interesting. This is clearly a pattern for me. Games that I have a lot of nostalgia for, that I played a lot, that I know well, I think are hard to stream. They're hard to sort of extract value from, and they're hard for me to separate from my nostalgia of them, which I think is probably a universal thing. It's just I'm recognizing it in this context. So probably won't be playing a lot of ice hockey for the original NES, because that's another one that I played a lot as a kid. But we'll play something fun next week. Have a great weekend. Have a great week. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for asking questions. Thanks for being here. Really, really appreciate all of you. And have a good night.